Patrick Troughton is one of my favourite actors who played the part of Doctor Who. All of his performances are well worth watching, but inevitably some of those stories are better than others. This is just a short run through of his period playing the Doctor, and I'll be giving letter grades to each story to let you know exactly how I feel about them. So we start with Power of the Daleks. Like so many stories from this area, this is missing from the archives. This is an animated reconstruction, which is pretty good. Since they brought this out, they have released a new version, which is apparently even better. But of course the live-action version would be better still. It's a good Dalek story, but Patrick Troughton still finding his feet here as the new Doctor. So I'll give it B+. Next, it's The Highlanders. Again, this is missing, but they haven't animated it yet. But from the soundtrack, it's nothing special really. Just another historical romp like The Smugglers, with the added bonus of Patrick Troughton getting to do lots of comedy impersonations, which is quite fun, but ultimately forgettable. C-. The Underwater Menace. Half of this is missing, but nobody can be bothered to animate it. Which is a shame really, it's a weird story, lots of strange things going on, but it is certainly memorable, if not always for the right reasons. C+. The Moon Base. Again, half of the episodes are missing, but at least they've animated them this time. The Cybermen are in it, and they're on the moon, and apart from that it's pretty unmemorable. B-. The Macro Terror. Missing, but it's all been animated, and it's a pretty good story. B. The Faceless Ones. Most of the episodes are missing, but they have been animated, and it's a good story. The setting of a modern day airport certainly makes it stand out for the rest, with lots of good location filming from the episodes we can see, and there's a solid alien conspiracy story playing out as well. B+. Next is Evil of the Daleks. This is a 7-part story which is mostly missing from the archives, and yes, I'm just reading now. There is an animated version, but it came out after I'd already watched the reconstruction, so I'll probably get around to it in a few years. But it is definitely worth watching. It's a good story. It starts in present-day Earth, then they travel in time, then they travel in space, and they do some really good stuff with the Daleks as well, in what was meant to be their final appearance. I'll give it an A. The Tomb of the Cybermen is not missing, so it's one of those I've seen the most times. I do have a bit of a soft spot for this one. The Tomb Age structure makes it feel like a classic, although the way the Cybermen are dealt with is a bit of an anticlimax, and the mute black slave character takes it into rather dodgy territory. Still, I can't help liking it. B+. Next up, The Abominable Snowmen. This is mostly missing, but an animated reconstruction has just been released on DVD. I haven't bought it myself as I'm way past that point now, maybe in my next go round. But even just watching the reconstructions, it was a pretty decent story, so I'll give it a B. The Ice Warriors. 2 episodes are missing, but they have been animated. Like many episodes of this run, there's not a lot you can say about it. It's just a perfectly decent Base Under Siege story, so I'll give it a B. The Enemy of the World. This was missing, but not anymore. I didn't buy the DVD because I bought it on iTunes, and very good it is too. It's one of the best stories of the era, in my opinion. It starts off like a Bond movie with helicopters and hovercraft. You get the Doctor's evil double with Patrick Troughton putting on an incredible accent, and the story is full of twists and turns to keep it interesting. Definitely one of the best of the era. A+. The Web of Fear, another one I bought on iTunes. One episode is still missing. Apparently they've animated it for the latest release, but the reviews suggest the new animation is not very good. But it's another really good story. You've got Yetis in the London Underground, some really convincing sets, and the introduction of Lethbridge Stewart. Just some of the many high points. A. Fury from the Deep. Missing, but it has been animated. Still, it's not one of the best. It does go on a bit, and it's not nearly as scary as it might have been in live action, so I can only give it a B-. The Wheel in Space. 4 of the 6 episodes are missing. I'm reading it again, aren't I? There were rumours this would be animated, but they came to nothing. So eventually I just gave in and watched the reconstruction on BitBox. And after years of waiting, it was a bit of a letdown. It's very slow moving and it takes ages for the Cybermen to actually do anything. But it does introduce Zoe, who's one of my favourite companions, and marks the start of possibly one of my favourite TARDIS themes of all time. Anyway, I'll give it a C. The Dominators. Every episode is complete. A lot of people don't like it, but controversially, I actually do. It's a bit of a guilty pleasure for me. Objectively, it's not very good. There's lots of really over-the-top performances, and the alien robots are just ridiculous. But I would argue it's one of the few stories that's actually so bad it's good. I enjoy watching it every time. It's laugh-out-loud funny in some places, even when it's not meant to be. Not many people would agree, but I'll give it B+. The Mind Robbery is next. A rare journey into the surreal and fantastical. The first episode probably works the best. After that it does maybe get a bit childish, with all the characters from fairy tales and nursery rhymes and that. But even so, it's a brave experiment, and for the most part it works. A-. The Invasion's next. One of the all-time best stories, I would say. 2 episodes are missing, but they have been animated, and to a much better quality than some of the other animated reconstructions. There's Cybermen, there's the birth of Eunice, and one of the best films ever in Tobias Vaughan. What more could you ask for? A+. The Croughtons. This feels old-fashioned even for the time, like they just took an old script from the William Hartnell era and rejigged it for Patrick Troughton. It's pretty average stuff, nothing to get excited about. C. The Seeds of Death. This is pretty good, but it's rather drawn out with lots of trips from the Earth to the Moon and back again to pad out the running time. And the Ice Warriors are kind of a generic villain at this point. B. The Space Pirates. Most of this is missing. It's a good idea. It's a space opera with no monsters or aliens or robots. It's just humans in the future, kind of like a precursor to Blake 7. Only without the witty dialogue or memorable characters. I suppose Milo Clancy is quite memorable, but the poor quality of the soundtrack makes it quite hard to understand what he's saying. There's also very few surviving visuals as well, so an animated version could only be an improvement. But as it is, D+. Finally, the War Games. And Patrick Troughton's era ends on a high. It's 10 episodes long, which is probably too much, but it's an epic story and it needs it. It starts off as pure historical, then goes into pseudo-historical, and finally ends up as full-on science fiction. And of course it ends with major revelations about the Doctor's past, which at the time were incredible. It's one of the best stories ever. A+. So that's the 1960s all done with then. And no more black and white, no more reconstructions. It's all plain sailing from here on in. When I do start on 70s Doctor Who, I think I'll be reviewing one season at a time. That way I can say more about each story, and I should be able to put out a new video every 4 to 6 weeks or so. So subscribe if you don't want to miss any of them. Press like if you enjoyed this. And I'll see you next time. Goodbye.